This is Module 3, Lesson 1, Intro to Creative Use Cases. So like we saw in our previous lessons, ChatGPT is a great research tool. It is great for pulling facts, summarizing articles, or even helping with writing tasks. And sure, of course, it is good at that, but there is this one thing that is often overlooked, and that is how good it is at being a creative collaborator. So it's not just for getting answers. It can help you imagine things. For example, story ideas, brand names, ad slogans, fictional worlds, character arcs, plot twists, even campaign ideas for games or writing prompts for videos. For example, writers can use it to test out story openings or break through blocks. Marketers can use it to come up with fresh angles, slogans, or even campaign hooks. Game designers or DMs use it to flesh out quests or world-building ideas. So as you can tell, there are so many avenues that creative work can be done with ChatGPT. So the key is learning how to talk to it like a creative partner and not just do this for me, but let's explore this together. In this module, we're going to walk through a bunch of hands-on examples. For example, storytelling and copywriting to character building and script generation. So you can see how actually put it to work in your own creative projects. Let's dive right into that then. In this lesson, we will explore how to use ChatGPT for creative writing. We'll go from storytelling and character development to slogans and even script writing. This is less about getting one perfect result and more about learning how to guide the model through multiple creative directions with follow-up prompts. Let's walk through each of these use cases step by step. Before we jump into examples, let's review the creative prompt formula. Yes, there is a formula. This formula helps you shape the tone and purpose of the responses that you want. So the formula is task plus context plus persona plus format plus tone. So these are all the components you want to include in your prompts. I will show you an example that includes all of these points. So, for example, you are a mystery novelist. Write the opening paragraph of a detective story set in 1920s Chicago. Now we have to assign a tone. So let's say in a suspenseful tone, and that would be the end right there. So this prompt has been crafted with all of the components from the formula. Let's dissect this prompt and I'll show you exactly where the components hide. So first of all, you have the task. We have write an opening paragraph. Then we have the context, which is story set in 1920 Chicago. Then we have the persona, which is mystery novelist. Then we have the format, specifically is an opening paragraph. And the tone is suspenseful. So now when we prompt it, it's going to come back with an opening paragraph of exactly what it is that we wanted. Feel free to read this through if you want. But this is just really an example on how to use this kind of a formula where you don't have to follow it in order. Just make sure that all the components are included. So this kind of prompt really tells the model who it is pretending to be, what the story is about, where is it set, the format you want, and the vibe that you're going for. But now let's open a new chat and try something original. So I'm gonna write another prompt. Here's our prompt. Write the beginning of a sci-fi story set in a world where plants have become the dominant species and humans live underground. So once we generate the response, which we have a title and a whole story, this is a good result. However, we can definitely spice it up and expand on it and overall reshape the story using follow-ups. So first of all, one great option is to expand the story. So let's say, continue this story. So now we have a continuation of this lowly sci-fi story still going. This is how you can take your idea and expand on it. Very good method. Next, you can also add some dialogue. So let's add some character dialogue. Okay, so on our expansion, we have added more dialogue, makes it more exciting, more interesting. We can also change the tone overall. So now we have to go back to prompt section and can you rewrite this to, I would say rewrite this story to feel more, let's say, comedic. Now we can, with a single prompt, change the entire story and change the tone of it, change the genre of it with a single prompt. Also, what we have included is an actual dialogue, which is useful. We don't have to go back from the top and re-prompt everything. Besides that, we can also add a creative constraint. So, for example, now rewrite the same scene in a style of a Shakespearean story. So with a single prompt, we can change the entire thing to a complete opposite, from a comedy to a Shakespearean story. And it definitely is taking the shape. You can see it just by the text format almost. So this kind of prompting lets you shape the tone, pacing, and even the format of your story without starting from scratch each time. This is a giant time saver. But now let's move on to the next. Creative writing isn't only for fiction. Let's look at some slogan writing and copywriting, especially useful for marketers and brand builders. So I'm going to take and go to a new chat and give it another prompt. Let's say I'm launching a new productivity app for remote workers. Can you give me 10 slogan ideas? And now with a single prompt, we already have 10 ideas perfect for a slogan for a productivity app. So from here, we can refine this even further. We can refine the style of these slogans. So what we can say is one slogan that is a pun, one that sounds like a motivational quote, and one that would work well in a tweet. And by doing this, we already are refining the results that we got to something that fits our needs better, because apparently we need a pun slogan, motivational quote slogan, and something that would work well in a tweet. So we have the pun, remotely possible. That's actually pretty funny. Discipline is freedom. Your workspace is where you decide. Lovely. Love that. Get more done. Log off earlier. Okay, that's kind of funny too. But here we go. By just one prompt, we completely refined the answer and narrowed down our options, which is also useful. Now that we refined the output that we got, we can also completely take this and make it into something else. For example, evolve these ideas into longer content. Let's do a prompt that says, can you turn these ideas into headline for a landing page? And this is a great way to generate multiple creative directions quickly, especially if you're brainstorming alone. So now we went from 10 slogans to 3 very tailored kind of slogans to a couple of headline copies for a landing page. Now let's talk about characters and world building tools. So ChatGPT also supports more in-depth creative development, like building fantasy worlds or designing characters. For this one, I'm going to open up a new chat and start a new prompt. I'm going to say, help me design a fantasy world where magic is powered by sound. Describe 3 locations and a ruling power structure. All right. So here we have a whole concept of a fantasy world, and it has followed the direction that we gave it, which is where magic is powered by sound. And we also have the 3 key locations and a ruling power structure. And from here, this is already pretty solid. We can also add some depth with a character. So from here, we would go and say, create a character from this world. A rebellious bard opposes the rulers. And now with this prompt, we have given our story a whole character, which we have specified exactly what the character does. So the story is gonna definitely revolve around that as far as the character goes. And we even have a name for it. We have backstory, abilities, motivation, quote. All right. And from here, we can also go further and refine with some narrative details. So with this prompt, we have really narrowed things down as far as the narrative goes. We had 3 flaws. First chapter, personal conflicts. So with this kind of prompting, you are leading the direction of your creative work, not just blindly saying, hey, give me a whack story. You are actually putting in a lot of your own ideas where ChatGPT is just helping you execute it. So this kind of prompting is especially useful for writers, game designers, or really anyone building a fictional world. Now I'll go in with a prompt and ask it to turn this following idea into a YouTube video script. A fantasy bard attempts to overthrow a corrupt magical regime using forbidden songs. And now from here, we can actually restructure this idea into another piece of content, which is for a YouTube video. It comes up with the title, and we have the entire script with directions. So we have opening scene, scene shift, narrator, montage, narrator. So this is very useful. So with this is all good, but we can also refine it a little bit more. So as someone who has made a YouTube channel, we usually need a more structured way for YouTube kind of scripts. So you need an intro, you need the main sections, you need a closing line or an outro. So let's ask ChatGPT to take this idea and really organize it in that way. So I'm going to do following prompt. And here you can see that ChatGPT turns this idea that we've been working on and refining into a YouTube video structure, which is very understandable with an intro, section 1, 2, and 3, and a closing line. So this really shows how flexible this model is across all formats and how you can reuse the same idea for different kinds of media like we just did with YouTube and stories and different genres of the story. This is such a versatile way to write creative content. So when it comes to creative writing that is long form, structured, and most reliable, GPT 4.5 is the best. However, GPT 4.0 is also a strong option for shorter form and playful creative writing, and also is available on the Plus plan. Free users can absolutely follow along using GPT 3.5, but of course some formatting and structure might require a little bit more manual tweaking. So this lesson was all about creative control. We learned how to iterate, reshape, and stretch a single idea in different directions using ChatGPT. So if you're writing fiction, building a brand, or scripting for media, prompting is a very flexible tool that helps you explore possibilities way faster and with more structure. I hope this helps you with your future creative endeavors. In this section, we're diving into something a little bit more visual, literally. ChatGPT now supports native image generation and editing directly inside the app. So you don't really need any extra tools, plugins, or even third-party services. You can either type your request something like create an image of a futuristic city on Mars right in the chat bar, where you can then just send out your request and it will generate you an image. Or what you can do is click on tools and select create an image. So this opens up a ton of creative possibilities. from designing visuals for content and marketing to mocking up product ideas or even building reference materials for storytelling and world building. This feature can be especially helpful for someone who's like a content creator, who's looking for thumbnails, social visuals, or illustrations. Also, product designers might find this very useful because a lot of times these product designers need rough mockups. Also for marketers who are building out campaign visuals, or mood boards, or just really anyone who thinks better in pictures. When it comes to the availability, this feature is available for both free and plus users inside ChatGPT. Free users, however, can use image generation, but with some limitations. For example, fewer generations per day and even slower access. For plus users, they get faster and more frequent image generation in general. This feature only works reliably with GPT-4o. Other models like GPT 3.5 or 4.1 mini doesn't support image generation natively. In the next lesson, we will walk through how to actually use these visual tools. Let's jump right in. Let's try out ChatGPT's built-in image generation by walking through a real example. So go ahead, open up a new chat, and then use a descriptive prompt, something like this. I'm going to say, create an image of a futuristic city at sunset with flying cars, glowing signs, and a golden skyline. And hit enter. And now it's going to generate an image right here in the chat. And all of this is based on your description. So the more specific and detailed you are with your prompt, the better the output will be and more tailored to what it is that you want. So now we're just waiting, and it should generate any second now. And as it's generating, you actually on top of the image can see the process of what it is that it's doing, like adding details before it was generating. So it's almost as if you are seeing it happen in real time, which is pretty cool. So here we have the results of the prompt that we put in. We can click on it to really zoom in and see all the details and the overall style. It looks really cool. And I'm very impressed with ChatGPT every time I make an image because the spelling recently is very correct, which is a very good sign. We have some flying cars. We have sunset. It looks very futuristic. So this is a very, very good output. So now that we have reviewed the image, we can also build on it by asking more things. For example, make a version with softer lighting and foggy skyline. And by putting another prompt, it is going to adjust this image based on this new prompt and really give us another version rather than you needing to start from scratch where you're like, oh, create another image of a futuristic city at sunset with flying cars, glowing signs, and golden skyline. And then you're inputting the other details that you would like to change. Now you can just kind of follow up. Here we can see it's unveiling. It's pretty cool already. It looks fairly similar to this one, which it's supposed to be. Now let's take a look. Yeah, it does look foggy. It is softer lighting, that's for sure. And it is another version of the same image. However, I am seeing some signs are missing, like here, this one. But besides that, it looks almost identical. So overall, this really shows that you can refine visual ideas. It's almost like giving feedback to the designer in real time. You don't really need to start over from scratch, like I said before. This model also remembers the context of your previous request and it adjusts accordingly, and then you end up with another version, not an entirely different image. But now let's try switching up the style entirely. So I'm going to go back to the text box and I'm going to say, can you show it as pixel art from a retro video game? And by putting in a simple prompt, again, it will take the same image and it will just switch the style. So this kind of style transformation is especially useful for content creators or game developers or really anyone who's experimenting with different aesthetics. This is an amazing tool, whether you're aiming for any kind of style, realism, flat design, surrealism, or maybe something like nostalgic like pixel art. And this is like guiding the tool with clear visual language in real time. So I can't wait to see how this turns out now. All right, so we have the pixel art version of this image ready. Let's zoom in and analyze. This looks like exactly like a carbon copy. So this really does prove that you can start with a single image and improve it as you go. Just put in a prompt with any kind of change that you would like to make, and it's not going to get lost with information. It's not going to generate you an entirely different image. This is a really great way to find that perfect aesthetic, stay consistent, and at the end get an amazing result. So overall, when you do this, be specific with your prompts. Mention things like lighting, mood, time of day, or materials like I did before. And think of this like directing a visual scene. Your words end up being the instructions, so be very clear and specific in your prompt about what it is that you want to see. You can also stock constraints like in a style of Studio Ghibli or at night or with a magical vibe. So it really depends on what it is that you want. You can specify and be as creative as you want to be. Of course, the more intentional your prompts, the better your visuals tend to be. And you will start to actually develop a feel for how to speak visually to this model. We'll go even deeper in the next lesson, including how to edit existing images. But for now, I would encourage you to play around with your own scene ideas and styles and have fun. Now that we have our generated image from our last lesson, let's explore how to edit this image using ChatGPT's built-in editing tools. The first step will be clicking on the image that you would like to edit. For me, it's going to be this pixel art one, just because I think it is the coolest one. So I'm going to click on that. And on the upper right corner, I'm going to click on select. For some people, this might say edit. Now I'm going to click on that. And this is the editing space of ChatGPT. As you can see, I have a little circular brush here, which allows me to select a part of the image, and then with a prompt, I get to change that part. So it's really easy. Let's say I want to change one of the cars for something else. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this brush and brush over the object. Now I have this object selected, and I'm going to go to the prompt box, and I'm going to put in a prompt that says, replace this flying car with a small hot air balloon. I hit enter, and now it's going to be editing that image with my direction right here in the chat. The image has been edited, you can see right here. And also one thing that stands out is that it actually tried to match the style and lighting of the scene, which is very impressive. So we had the car here, and it turned it into a hot air balloon, but it also added another one. This does bother you. You can, again, go over with the selection tool, brush over and say, remove this air balloon. But for me, I actually like the way it looks, so I'm just going to keep it here. So now we're going to try another edit, but in a different section of the image. So I'm going to highlight this section of the building here, and I'm going to add a neon sign on this building. So I hit enter, and now it's going to do the same thing. So unlike before, I was changing the object in the image. This time I am adding something new to it. It should handle it very well also because there already are some neon signs in the image itself, but there aren't any right there. All right, so here we have the generated result. I have asked for a neon sign here. It has added it. However, there are a couple more signs that it has added. But as I said before, easy to fix by just selecting this and removing them or adding anything else you want. But this is a really great way to give your image a more stylized or a custom vibe and really see how ChatGPT interprets those creative tweaks. So feel free to play around with this feature and have fun because it really is very useful if you're trying to generate something and you want to tweak it along the way. I do have a couple of tips before you go. So first one, of course, you can be flexible with your words, but clear prompts usually lead to better edits. Also, if something looks off, you can undo or even rephrase your prompt. And finally, keep your edits small. Think of it like painting with AI rather than redesigning a whole canvas. Just a heads up, this editing feature, which is also called in-painting, is only available with GPT 4.0, which requires Plus or the Pro plan. Free users can generate images, but they won't be able to edit them, unfortunately. So in a few clicks, you can make precise changes to AI-generated images, whether for your creative projects, client work, or even just if you're experimenting. I'll see you in the next lesson. Let's take everything we have learned so far, which is text prompts, image generation, and creative workflows, and put it all together in a way that mirrors a real-world use case. In this example, we're going to simulate a branding and product design session for a fictional herbal tea company. I'm going to start with a new chat, and I'm going to put in a prompt that says, design packaging for a new herbal tea brand with a earthy, minimalist style. All right, we'll hit enter, and this will give ChatGPT the general direction, but it does still leave room to suggest creative interpretations. So we have the brand name, which is Soul Tea. Love that. Packaging style overview, color palette, typography, front of pouch design, back of pouch design. It has thought of everything. Now we want to expand this into a visual and brand identity. So I'm going to go on and type in a prompt that says, can you create a branding image, a mood board style description, and suggest fonts and a color palette that match the vibe. So this is where ChatGPT will start to pair visual thinking with verbal reasoning, which is great for anyone who is a designer, a marketer, or really anyone who is trying to build something from scratch. This should be very interesting. Okay, we have the image generated. Let's take a look. We have a beautiful, very minimalist looking packaging. It did stay consistent with the name, which is the Soul Tea Herbal Infusion. And we have some font, or we have some typography recommendations right here with a color palette and everything. I think this looks absolutely beautiful. And it is very consistent with not only the requests that I just made in the prompt, but also to what it did suggest in the beginning. Right? So now we have this branding image done, but let's turn that identity into something with a bit more emotion and purpose. I'm going to go back to the prompt box and start a prompt that says, can you write a product tagline and a short brand story for this tea? All right, we have our tagline, rooted in nature, sipped in stillness. And the brand story is written out. Believe that quiet power of nature. That's beautiful. Okay. So you'll notice how the tone shifts based on the visual identity ChatGPT just created that we saw right here. Now we bring it all together with a visual. Again, going back to the prompt box. So based on all of this, generate an image of the tea packaging with a clean, minimal, and the brand. So now it should bring it all together and show us how to put all of the ideas and all of the visuals that we've had into a whole brand. I just realized I was meant to put in design here. All right, and here we have the final packaging of this imaginary team brand. Of course, you can follow up by refining it, like tweaking the color palette if you would like to change that. Or you can also ask for different packaging formats. For example, a box, a pouch, or a canister. So let me try to ask for a box. And this would be the box version of the same packaging. And this is all created by AI. That's absolutely incredible. So this kind of workflow is really a great example on how ChatGPT can help translate an abstract idea into something tangible and without having you jump between multiple tools. I can see this being extremely useful for when you're really in the early stages of branding, exploring possibilities and quickly iterating on them in real time. So that's it for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. In this lesson, we will flip the usual process. So instead of writing a prompt to generate an image, we will upload an image and use it to inspire ideas. This is perfect for writers, game designers, or really anyone who wants to spark creativity from visual cues, especially when you're feeling stuck or want a fresh angle. So we will start by uploading an image into ChatGPT. You can do that by pressing this little plus button right here and click on Add Photos and Files. And this will lead to your computer where you can upload photos directly from your device. I have this photo already prepared, so I'm gonna upload that. And this really can be anything from a fantasy map, which I'm using right now as an example, or even an old book cover or an abstract, whatever feels creatively rich. So now I have the image uploaded, and in the prompt section, I'm going to put in, based on this image, give me 3 creative story ideas. And now we hit enter and see the magic happen. So this is really where things get really interesting, because ChatGPT analyzes the visual and looks at the elements and spins them into short, compelling story seeds. So let's take a quick look. We have 1, Compass Key Chronicles. 2, The Last Voyage to the Windshade. Cool. Okay. And Islands of the Forgotten Oaths. Oh, that gives Pirates of the Caribbean vibes. I like that. So each idea might focus on a different aspect, like we saw from the titles. A mysterious symbol or a dramatic landscape or even a certain visual style. So now we have these 3 beautiful ideas, but let's move on and see what else we can do with this. So now I'm going to go to the prompt section again and put in another prompt. So describe this image like a scene in a novel. This really will push the model to use sensory detail, tone, and narrative rhythm. This is great for helping writers visualize settings or unlock new voices. Here we have the novel description of this particular image. The brittle scent of parchment and salt hung in the air as Elira unrolled the ancient map across the table. From the first line, it sounds very interesting already. I love that. But we have this beautiful description just from a very, very simple prompt. You can, of course, get a little bit more detailed and more in depth about what it is that you would like this description to have. So using visuals as inspiration like this is really a powerful creative technique. It is fast, as you saw. It is intuitive and often leads to unexpected angles you wouldn't get by sharing from text alone. And also the best part is that you can keep refining. So as I said, you can keep going back and tweaking details and get more specific and really get exactly what you want. You can ask for character profiles, conflict ideas, or even rewrite the scene in a different genre. And all of this started from one image. Thank you for joining me in this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.